Here we go. 3, 2, 1. We are live, sort of. I don't know. Welcome to what we call still in beta, because everything in flight simulation is kind of in beta these days, and that's kind of what we want to talk about. With me is William and John. My name is Roman, and this is, well, still in beta. Hello.
Hello.
Oh,
Hello?
good. I was hoping we get some proof that you actually exist, and I'm not just some dude talking to myself.
No, we're just the voices in your head.
Good. Now finally have you on record. At least that's what I hope we have after all of the tech issues we had to solve before we started.
Well, it was probably still in beta.
Pretty much, yeah, I would say it's even alpha, which is also a thing that we have to talk about. Everything seems to be alpha now, going away
Oh
from
yeah, it's
beta.
getting worse. I think we're regressing. We're going from beta to alpha and everything.
Yeah,
I guess
so
that's the
for
problem with
everyone who,
downloads.
yeah, for everyone who's wondering what they stumbled into here, it is basically us talking about flight simulation in an honest way. There is no sugarcoating. There is no being diplomatic or anything. If something's bad, we tell you it's bad because there's so many reviews out there. Not that they're bad, but let's just say if the product isn't exactly great, you might still buy it because people don't tell you what's not so great, or they just, I don't know. I don't want to bash other people. I love many of the reviews, but we kind of have our own take on many of these ideas.
And I think that the problem with that idea, and this is without going off on a tangent on, and that's further episodes down the line. But I think the problem is it seems to me like that the reviews are based on the idea that this aircraft or this payware scenery or whatever, payware sceneries aren't so bad, but this product is going to be better in the future. Yeah, and I think that's where it comes down to. And the thing is, and that's fine, depending on the this disclosure, the disclaimer. Yeah, maybe in a when you're selling it, but honestly, I don't think that's. I think that's the problem. They don't say necessarily, but again, that we can, drill down into that in the future. But if you're writing a review to say that this is a fantastic airplane, or will be a fantastic airplane, rather, I think that's where the honesty gets lost.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And again, still in beta is kind of where this all comes from.
Yep.
Yeah, today's topic is kind of about the current state of flight simulation. Where are we? Where are we going to go? And what kind of amazing products are to be expected soon that are not as great at the moment while they're in alpha or beta or whatever they are.
Before we do that, I think it's worth maybe at least telling everybody who we are.
That's probably a really good idea. So why don't you go first? Because I have to think about a cover story,
William, why don't you go first? I got to think of something.
Yeah, William's probably the most dishonest guy. He probably has a cover story ready.
Well, we all met through the virtual airline that we are part of, Metro Air.
Oh God, he named it already.
Years.
5 minutes.
That was a shameless plug. Go on.
Yeah, we'll put the
yeah, we fly combis, by the way.
I've known Sean for 10 years. I've known Roman for probably 3 or 4.
Really?
Been into flight simulation for ever, since I can remember. I've worked in aviation myself for about 11 years, so I like to think I know what I'm talking about, but who knows? Oh, and I love so jetways.
Oh God.
Well, and that's okay. So we could go on with an introduction all day because that's what makes this so great. We all have very different opinions on what we want out of a flight sim, which is fantastic. That's what drives, I think, innovation is opinionated community.
Definitely. Innovation, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. What perceived to be innovation, but anyways, I'm Sean. I've been in the flight simming community for, I don't know, like 15 years. Been with Metro Air Virtual, which is where we all met. Another shameless plug. About 10, 11 years now. I'm also an owner of another virtual airline that's in the startup, which I won't say the name just yet. And on the outside, I work on the internet, but I suppose as far as an intro is concerned, I've been flying for a very long time, both in VATSIM and non-VATSIM and payware aircraft. And I mean, I've got a little bit of everything. since back from '98. Well, really before '98, Flight Sim '98. But that's
Alright,
me.
started for me.
Now, Roman, I've just stumbled through my introduction, so you've had plenty of time. Yours better be good.
Yeah, I'm a real world pilot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
In his dreams.
Okay, yeah. I think the only thing we really have in common is that we all met at this Metro Air, which is really, really good, by the way. Shameless plug. And yeah, I'm not really working in aviation at all, but I'm a total addict to flight simulation and work in IT most of the time. Sometimes with aviation customers, but other than that, I don't work complaints, sadly. Yeah, that's pretty much me. And I had this wonderful idea to do a podcast, and now I have to live up to it, and that's why you basically listen to us. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, we're all from 3 different countries, by the way.
Oh yeah, I live in 3 different countries, usually at least 3 different countries most of the time.
No, we live in 3 different countries. We weren't talking about you
Roman
living in 3.
several
Oh yeah, we live in 3 different countries, so that makes like 6 different countries for this podcast.
We're already international.
There it is.
Very
There it is.
international,
That's,
yeah.
and we have plenty of guest speakers in the future. We have so many friends and
Yeah, at least one.
and co-pilot, yeah, at least one, and co-pilots and staff members in Virtual Airlines that have such a ton of experience, and we're blessed to have all those people around us to make the community better. So, anyways, today's topic, Roman.
Well, I already mentioned it. You should be able to remember that. Oh God.
Was it the current state
We
and
want
the
to
future
talk
state
about.
of?
Yeah, it was your idea. I mean, why do I have to do the intro?
We discussed this only a few minutes ago.
And the funny, why do you have to do the intros? Because this is your podcast that you came up with, and I'm just
now it's
along
my
for the ride.
podcast. Okay, fair enough. Good. We want to talk about the
So
current
it's been
state
about
of.
5 minutes and we've already descended into chaos.
That's how we do all our descents.
It's professional operation here.
I mean, we could have also just called this podcast "Descent into Chaos," but whatever.
We could change the name. We'll get back to y'all on that.
I mean, it's still in beta, so yeah, why not?
Exactly.
Okay, so today's topic, for everyone who just joined late or didn't pay any attention to our rambling so far, we talk about the state, the sorry state, the good state, whatever you want to say, of flight simulation in 2020, and that's not about Flight Simulator 2020. So, William, what is your thought about the flight simulation status at the moment? I mean, you're kind of using old technology still.
No, I'm not using old technology. You'll find I'm using very up-to-date technology as of
FS9?
September last year. I took the massive leap from Flight Simulator 9 all the way to P3D version 4.
Which is part of why I would like
diehard-
to hear your opinion coming from like the Stone Ages to the modern
Yes,
world. What
exactly,
do you
yes.
think about it?
My motto has always been, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I loved FS9. I thought it was a really great product. It was very stable. And I never had any issues. And at the time, I had an older computer, so I could work all my sceneries and all my planes, and it was fine for me. But I finally upgraded. I came into the 21st century, and I bought a new Alienware gaming desktop last year, and now I've got P3D V4, and I absolutely love
Not sponsored, by the
it. I
way.
think it's a great sim. I think it's very stable. I have great frame rates. I think there's lots of fantastic add-ons for it out there. Some good, some bad. Topics of other conversations. But I think most people tend to be either P3D or X-Plane, which I kind of guess is where we come in, because I'm P3D, Sean's X-Plane.
And I'm in both.
Roman's kind of in the middle. He dabbles with both, really. Now, I have seen X-Plane, and I think it's very good as well. I think it's got some great merits.
What? That's not what you usually say.
Like everything, they all have their pluses and minuses.
This podcast lives of honesty. Don't start lying. Oops, almost crashed here. Yeah, talking about
mentioned
lies.
Snow,
What about X-Plane then, Sean?
I'm not going to go on a rant. So here's the thing. I think I do. So I do think that X-Plane is superior in many ways to P3D. Now, do I say superior completely? No. And I think this is the state of the current state of flight simulation is you said that people either use P3D or X-Plane. Well, that's the problem. That's all you got. I mean, FSX, which is P3D, changed my mind.
I
And
agree.
well, and you can, but and with some improvements they've made to it, it's usable today. I mean, honestly, FSX was not usable the day it came out, and for many years was just it just.
I can confirm that in P3D you can right-click as many times as you like.
Yeah, see, and that was just the whole issue where FSX didn't work well on modern. It was such a bad timing when that got released, and that's a whole nother topic. But anyways, X-Plane I think could be truly the future for flight simming in general. I think many of the things that people want in P3D are representable in X-Plane, and I think P3D, while good, has the following of the payware community more than anything, and makes it a bit more of a universal experience. I'm not going to say one's better than the other because I don't think that's fair. I do think that they both have their merits.
Yeah.
And I'm not, just because I use X-Plane doesn't mean that I'm going to sit here and say it's better, but I do think it has quite a few features to it that make it, I guess, make it more enjoyable, a bit more immersive, I suppose. Minus the fact that you don't have certain ground handling and stuff like that, like P3D has. But the aircraft themselves seem a bit more immersive. And I think it has more for the budget gamer, I suppose, the budget simulator. I would say X-Plane's the way to go because you can get really good freeware out there for the Boeing lineup. It comes with a great Boeing airplane, plus the Zebos are fantastic, and all the other ones that you can do. And I think P3D, you're buying in.
With P3D, you need to remortgage your house, but there we go.
Well, and the same thing applies for X-Plane. Once you get outside, if you think about it, once you get outside the Boeing, Zebos, it gets really expensive really fast. So it is in both respects. X-Plane has better freeware scenery. P3D has better support for freeware aircraft. It can go back and forth all day long. What's better?
See, this is where one of the contrasts come in, because the freeware market is kind of almost pretty much dead in terms of FSX and P3D, whereas it's still quite alive in X-Plane.
For sceneries, yes. For aircraft, there are freeware aircraft out there, and I give it to the guys out there that try to make it using Plane Maker and everything. They do their best. And the problem is I think anybody can relate to the fact that once you pay good money for good aircraft, you cannot go back to something that was handmade, or homemade rather. It's just, unfortunately, you become a snob to what you expect out of an aircraft, or scenery for that matter, and that's fair. So again, I didn't want to make this long-winded. X-Plane has X-Plane has a long way to go in light of what could be coming in the future.
But I think if it's going to succeed, they need to make some big changes very soon. They're about to be left behind.
Well, I think both sims are getting ready to be left behind. The difference is P3D is not generally made for the average enthusiast, and X-Plane, while also made for commercial applications, is generally made for enthusiasts such as us. And you're right, and you're seeing it already, it's happening. Vulcan, which I know had been in the works well before 2020 had ever, I know that wasn't shoot, we got to get this together now. Why didn't that happen sooner? I don't have the answer.
P5 definitely was, oh shit, we need to get ourselves together.
Well, and that's fair, because they saw something on the horizon that could potentially put them in the dust, and the idea of competition is now becoming important. And that's something we don't have in the flight sim community. Generally, is good competition to push further expansion and lower prices down. It's expensive, flight sim as a hobby. We all know that it can get very pricey. And
I don't want to add up my add-ons already, and that's only from when I bought P3D last year.
Oh no, it'll bankrupt you. If you really let it, it could put you have to put yourself on a budget almost when it comes to flight simming, and that's fine. That's like any hobby. You spend the money, and you spend as much as you want to make that hobby better for yourself.
But what are you spending? My airports will look fantastic.
Yeah, but what are you spending the money on? Are you spending it on something good, or something still in beta?
Well, I would say there's not as much in beta when it comes to sceneries on P3D. I think that tends to be more an aircraft thing.
No, and X-Plane's the same way. You usually get it. Here it is. It's done. there's nothing to be added to it. Maybe some minor tweaks or fixes that get released or something, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. But you don't pay for a scenery and here's the ground, no terminals. That'll be coming in a future update. That'll be $49.95. That's not what happens with sceneries. So, anyways, that's explained. Roman.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I sit kind of in the middle on that. I love both Sims, and I'm bankrupt thanks because of P3D and X-Plane at the same time. The thing
You
is,
have to buy everything twice.
yeah, in a way. So I completely agree with Sean. If you want to be a bit more money aware, have more access to freeware, X-Plane is the way to go, which excludes aircraft in a way because except for the Zibo 737 series and, well, company projects, I don't know if they're really like each other very much, but anyway, there are some ways to get good aircraft, but you're limited. As far as projects coming up, there's always promises, oh yeah, we do a free 787 or a free 767, and they never come. The reason is it's very, very work intensive building an aircraft. With scenery, it's a lot different because X-Plane a long time ago made that decision to have this like Lego block system. So everybody can really go download this world editor thing and sort of piece together an airport, which will look more or less good. Upload it to the hub or use some external libraries and sort of put it up for grabs for everyone to use. And that's a nice thing. So that's why we have thousands of packages of freeware airports that aren't really bad. P3D doesn't have that. When I look at the default airports, only a few are okay. The rest is just what happened here. Was there like a nuclear winter or anything? I mean, why?
It's definitely Russian toilet blocks.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's something FSX and P3D kind of missed because, yeah, this whole autogen thing, I don't know, it's not very good. And it doesn't look any better in P3D V5 from what I've seen. I mean, I don't have V5. I don't need V5 at the moment.
You see, for me, I have never been one for defaults.
Yeah, me neither. And that means my world in P3D is very small and very expensive. Every time I want to fly somewhere and I have to spend $20, $30, maybe even $40 for an airport, and I fly there only once, it's a very expensive hobby. But then again, Sean puts it quite correctly by saying, well, if you go to the movies, you spend $20 per person, maybe more if you want something to eat, and you see a movie.
Price popcorn.
Yeah, if that's another $50, don't worry.
Oh
yeah. A scenery you kind of keep, and if you revisit it a few months later and so on, your price per usage goes down. I mean, I'm actually that addicted that I think about that. It's a bit sad.
Well, it goes for everything. It goes for an airplane. Everybody says, "Oh my God, you spent $90 on an airplane." I'm like, "Yeah, but if I get."
But I fly it 90 times at least.
Yeah, 50 hours out of it, or 100 hours, or however many hours I'm going to get out of this airplane, it's going to pay for itself in the entertainment value of it. But that $90 airplane better be worth $90.
And that brings us to the state the flight simulation is in. We kind of depend on payware for a good experience, and we're willing to pay for good payware. But a lot of payware seems to be basically a bit of a, I wouldn't want to use the word money grab, but I kind of will use that word.
No, I'll use it. It's money grab.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's not be too diplomatic. It's a money grab. I mean, some airplanes have such obvious faults that I think, have they ever flown that aircraft? I mean, it's unflyable. It may be flyable 6 months, 12 months later.
Have they ever been on
but
that
you
plane?
pay, yeah, have you ever seen that plane, a picture of it or something? Have you ever found the manual for it? I mean, what happened here? And that's a bit of a problem.
It is a problem. I think it's probably very hard. I'm not a developer. I think it's probably very hard to create a study level aircraft, especially on the likes of, the 787, the 777. I mean, any the A350. I mean, and I'm not labeling any particular developers at this time. I'm just saying the aircraft in general. They're very smart aircraft that, I'm sure some of the information to make them work is not easy to find or not even really available unless you ring up Boeing and say, hey, I'm trying to make a 787 or 777 or whatever it is. I really need some help with how this works, or get their backing on it. Yeah, so I get it. It's hard, right? And it's not ever going to be perfect. I don't expect perfection out of anything. However, I think there is a level of, quality that one should put into something if you're going to charge that kind of money for it. And I'm not saying don't charge a lot of money for it, because I get it. It takes a lot of time. Sometimes multiple people, I imagine, get involved in these. I won't say companies necessarily. I don't know the size of the developers team, but it takes a lot of effort to make that. So I get the price tag. I don't get the price tag on aircraft that aren't finished. And if they're not finished and you're going to charge a good amount of money, you need to say, hey, this isn't finished. You're buying into something early. You're paying a lot of money for it, but that's the support, the development for it. And it'll one day, this is where we plan to get the aircraft too. And at least you're upfront about it. Everybody knows, you know what you're buying into. But if you're going to sit there and put off a bunch of fancy screenshots and write all the stuff that it can do, and then you pay the 50, 100, whatever dollars it is for the aircraft, and suddenly it's not any good, or it's like, okay, I'm going to have to wait a long time to use this. That's like going back to the movie example of paying $50 at the door. Okay, now it'll be 2 weeks before you can come in.
Yeah,
It's still in production, so you'll have to come back.
Yeah, it's very, very good. Yeah, the movie hasn't been made yet, but if you want to, buy now, I mean, I get the whole idea of early access, or
Yeah, you can see the raw cut without any proper editing, but if you want to have the full version, you have to wait for 2 years. Wonderful.
yeah, and that's just, if you're gonna do that, fine. If people like you enough, they'll support you, but you got to be upfront about it. You got to be honest. And you're right. We depend on payware generally. I mean, look at P3D. I don't think you really get anything to fly, so you're gonna have to pay some money. X-Plane, you get very little, and the ones that are in X-Plane are old. They're good, but they're old aircraft. They're from the old X-Plane 11 day or X-Plane days.
Yeah.
So they're not. It doesn't have the latest plugins and all that stuff that you could do everything with. It'll get you by. But yes, we rely on payware, and when there's only one or two aircraft out there for that one air type that you want, you're kind of limited. So either don't buy, or pick and choose which one you think is going to be the best. But either way, we're starting to see a ramp up in developers wanting to make money. And is it a money grab? Yes, it is a money grab in some sense of it. However, isn't that what business is? It's a money grab.
No, it shouldn't be like
I don't have any problem with these sim developers charging money for their products, because most of the time they're really good products, and they're excellent quality, and it's worth them. But I think sometimes they get a bit too greedy and try to outcharge or rather outcharge their product compared to what's also on the market, which is often better. And then on top of that, they then decide that, oh, well, you're going to get this aeroplane, but it's only half the aeroplane, and you want the rest of it. Well, you're going to have to pay another $30.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you want the freight version as well, do you? Oh, well, that's another $50. And before you know where you're at, that initial sort of $70 to $80 aeroplane is suddenly ratcheted up to being 150 or more, and it's not necessarily even fully working, or doesn't really have everything in it, and it's not quite accurate. And I tend to judge things myself in P3D based on PMDG. They are probably the premier flight sim developer out there. They have excellent products. They charge a lot of money for them, but they're worth
not
it.
Sponsored.
And they provide good support.
We don't do that here.
No, not sponsored. But
yeah,
they have great products. And then you have other companies who do things that want to charge the PMDG prices, but they don't want to provide the support or the quality of the product to go with it. And I think that is where it starts to annoy people, because people are wanting to buy these planes, and you sort of get sucked into it almost. You don't really want it because it's not very good, but you sort of think, oh, I've got to have it. And I just think they're ripping people off sometimes.
Yeah, and one thing that I hate to see is, I mean, we know a lot of pilots, and we advise them as good as we can on based on our own experience with all the models we have, and we have a lot of them, especially shared between us. We probably have almost everything on the market. Yeah. And many of them collect dust because we don't like them very much or something. Yeah, I mean, that's just bad. But we try to tell people what they can expect from them, and sometimes they still end up buying those products, and then they say, yeah, it's really not very good, but it was like $60, and then they sort of waste their time with it because they bought it and they can't return it, obviously. And
Well,
I'm
yeah,
sure.
instead
I'm
of
sure one
having
of our
more fun
pilots.
with something else, they should have gotten probably instead to have a better experience. I'm not saying,
I'm sure one of our pilots said the other day that they were talking about a product on X-Plane that they'd bought, and they actually said, "Oh, I should have listened to Sean. He said it was rubbish."
yeah. It happens, but I think the problem is it's the shiny jet syndrome. There's a type that they want. Let's just say it's a big airplane. Oh man, that's it right there. That's the definition of flight simming, and it looks great in the screenshots. I'll give it a go, and then you're right, and then they get told you probably shouldn't have bought that, but they want to go find out for themselves. The thing about it is not everybody has a whole lot of disposable income. To just drop 60 or $100 or whatever, 50, whatever it might end up being every time something new comes out or whatever. And I think this is where the money grab / ethical issue comes along. Is if you're not going to put up front what the hell is going on with your airplane or your whatever it is that you're selling, and somebody takes the $50 that they don't really have to spend, or that's all they've got, and you know what, I find I'm gonna treat myself and buy this, and then they do it, and it's a disappointment.
yeah,
That is terrible, because that person now just wasted $50, and that they hope that whatever it is that they just bought gets better in the future, because it's a pile of trash. Because you gotta you gotta say what it is you're selling. It's as simple as that. Don't sugarcoat it. Be
we're
honest with the
selling
community.
trash.
Well, yeah, because the community is small. This is
Yeah.
a small community. As big as if people think it is, it's really a smaller niche community. We're going to find out about it. We're going to know, and the word's going to get around. And all you have is your damn reputation when it comes to something like that. So you need to be upfront. And if you're upfront about it, nobody can bash you for it.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Simple
the
as
thing
that.
is,
Hey, we said it. We're
reputation,
still working on it. Thanks for buying in.
the reputation seems to go away as well, because one thing I've noticed is we've seen quite a lot of newcomers and they have no idea about the history of many of these companies and what they did. Some of them did actual criminal things, not mentioning anyone. And it has been
I wouldn't do that
forgotten
one.
rather quickly. Even some of our pilots who said, "Oh, I would never buy from them," they don't mention them anymore. They've probably never bought anything, but they also don't continue bashing them now. So yeah,
It's
people forget, and new people
exactly.
get sucked in. They have no idea really what's good, what's not. They see a screenshot, as you said, and say, "Oh, this is so shiny. This is my dream aircraft. I've been on this when I was 5 years old, and I always wanted to fly it." And boom, then they buy it, and they have like the worst experience ever, and they hate the
Now, let me
developer or flight simulation as such, and that's terrible.
I want to be clear on that. It's not that the person doesn't know how to fly it, doesn't understand it. That's not what I'm getting at, and I know nobody alluded to that. I'm just saying, for anybody who's listening, I'm not saying they're getting in an airplane that's study level and they can't fly it. That's not what I'm getting at. That's on them to learn how to do. And if that aggravates them, well, then don't buy a study level aircraft. But
Project Airbuff is always out there for you.
yeah, if you just want direct GPS, there's plenty of airplanes out there that were made years and years ago that will work for the newcomer. But
Direct GPS is great for your on-time schedules.
it really is. The SIDs and stars and routes, I can throw that out the window. Who's got time for that?
Who needs a SID, a star, and a chart? What's that all about?
Well, I think pilots right now are doing direct GPS. There ain't much going on up in the air. They can afford that. But the idea though that you're right. Somebody jumps in, and the thing is, it can be so damaging. And I've actually witnessed this. I've witnessed the complications of terrible payware, and flight sims alone are difficult. Whether it be X-Plane or P3D, there's problems. There's tweaking sometimes. There's crashing. There's updates. You've got enough issues with the flight sim itself, just keeping that working. I have the hood up on it more than I fly it, I think. But
Don't we all?
True.
and that's just inherent with this hobby, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I've seen people get discouraged to the point where they just throw in the towel and say, "I just spent all this money and nothing works. Can you help me?" I'm like, "Well, no, I can't, because you bought something that's just terrible." And I'll look it up, and I'll be like, "Yeah, no, I would have bought that too, not knowing that was the case, because it wasn't any." And then they say, "Well, go out, read reviews." Well, a lot of reviews out there, and I've read plenty of them, don't really point out the serious faults. They point out some minor things here and there, but they don't straight up say like this is a big problem. And I think that's the issue, is there's not the speaking up saying this is a huge issue that you should be aware of. And
this
there are
brings
some
me
reviews
back
that do
to
that.
support. That brings me kind of back onto support that I was talking about before. Is that you pay that money for an airplane, it's not working. They're saying it's not working. We're fixing it, but yet when people ask for updates or try to get updates, they seem to take it as some kind of personal slight against them and refuse to answer their questions or say that, oh, you shouldn't be changing this or you shouldn't be changing that, and then they sort of get arsy with the customer, and the customer is the person that's paid you the money to be able to develop these things, and yet you're slating them and not helping them. That's another thing that really winds me up quite a lot.
Well,
And we've seen it a lot in development as well. If you're going to post pictures of a plane in development, you are going to get the question asked, oh, when's it going to be released? And yet they all seem to just get, well, you know it's not being released yet. We've said we don't ask that question. Don't keep asking these things. Like, well, don't keep posting pictures then, because that's what's going to happen. You post pictures, people are going to want to know when it's being released. That's my mind.
yeah, I mean, I'm on the fence about that one. I mean, I've tried to create things before, and I get how long they can take and the problems you can run into them. And even if you post something in the beginning stages, of course, like you said, people are going to ask, and then most developers will somewhere say in there like no ETA, or it'll be done when it's done. But that's in the sense that you're creating something new that hasn't been released yet and nobody's paid any money for. So you can say it'll be released when it gets released, and people should accept that and understand that. I can think of one big thing right now that people want to know the release date on, and nobody has said anything about. But that's fine, because they'll release it when they are ready to release it. However,
It doesn't look like it's ready for release.
well, if you make something, sell it, you should support it. Now, if you make something broken and sell it, and still in beta, and then sell it, and it doesn't work right, and everybody's asking you when you're going to fix it, and you get, like you said, and you will see it in the forums, and the developer gets really, kind of, yeah, like you said, pissy with people about it. And to me, it's like, okay, well, maybe you shouldn't have released it yet. Maybe you should have waited. Instead of getting the paycheck that you were trying to get off of it, wait until it's done. People will wait for something to be finished. They might be anxious about it and want it to come out, but they'll wait for it. And I think anybody would say that I'd rather wait for it to be just released, fixed, and ready to rock and roll with minor bugs that can be addressed that aren't detrimental to its usage.
Yeah.
But I gotta assume that developers get aggravated by the things they've got to deal with, plus dealing with the public, and I get that. But you got to stop and think for a second: how much money did these people just give you, and what did you give them? And I think
that's the problem with also releasing something prematurely and releasing it and it being rubbish is that product is then getting a bad reputation for itself, because people talk, like you say, small community, our virtual airline, people are in the various forums and Discord channels talking about it, and eventually, before you know where you're at, nobody wants to buy that product because everybody's saying, "Oh no, it's crap."
Yeah, a good example about that is the Rotate MD80 for X-Plane, which started in such a shape that it was completely unusable. Everybody, well, at least most people I heard hated it because it was unflyable. And I think, Sean, you would agree that this is now one of the best aircraft we've ever seen.
It's arguably one of the best,
Yeah.
and for two reasons. One, it's modeled fantastically. It looks great. It's fantastic on the system. It's great on frames. If you have a crap computer and you have X-Plane, and you want to buy an airplane, buy the Rotate MD80.
Yeah, you know everything about crap computers, so yeah.
Yeah, I rode a crap computer for many years until I finally bought a new one. But that airplane works great, and it's got good systems, good, VNav, LNav, all the computing things that it has to do, which would normally bring frame rates down, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
But yes, I don't know but here's the thing, and to your point, I knew nothing about Rotate and anything about them, and I bought it, and it was fantastic. Now, if I had known it was trash in the past, and now maybe I would be a little bit more ambivalent about spending $60 or $50 or $60, whatever it was, on an aircraft.
Yeah, but the reason for me not to buy it was essentially just that. I had this in my head, okay, it's an unflyable aircraft. I don't want an unflyable aircraft. And yeah, there goes their reputation essentially, and that's just not good to begin with. But that's
There's
only
plenty of
there's a
there's plenty of developers that are carrying on doing that now on Explain.
yeah, Explain also P3D in some areas, and the thing is, this is a good example. It got better, but I have some aircraft for both simulators that are just still terrible, and they will probably never be fixed. And I think a lot of people have that problem. And it's not just with aircraft, it's also with scenery. I know William will probably go off on a tangent now. Orbex has very nice products, but most of the products I own, I don't use because they're so intensive on the frame rates. They're completely unusable, even on a high-ish end system. So yeah,
Don't get me started.
all that money has gone down the drain. If somebody else
I'll
asks
save
me
that
now,
for another episode.
yeah, let's save that for another episode. Yeah, anyway, you waste all that money, you can't use it. It's probably, if you have a few packages of their things, you may have $150, $200 down the drain, and that's gone. You can't have it back. Tough shit. What are you going to do, right? So
I think that's that wraps up the current state of payware development. Now, that's not to say that there is great payware out there, and there's great companies out there. Suppose we bash on the negative more than the positive, but there's a lot of good companies out there that produce good stuff, and they do the right thing, and they offer good support, and they're always trying to make things better. But there are companies out there or people that are, I think, need to rethink a little bit how they go about handling certain things, just so they don't burn themselves. I mean, the last thing we need is less developers because they're not making money because they made something bad. We need more developers. We need more companies. We need competition. We need innovation. We need people to want to, create something, which then drives the price down, or hopefully would drive the price down, and
or at
all
least
that.
quality up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in a way, this wraps up what we were talking about. We have this state where everything depends heavily on payware because the freeware market is either very specific, like Explain freeware, or simply not existent. P3D most of all. I mean, there isn't much freeware at all. And we depend on this, and a lot of developers seem to take advantage of that. They hype up some product and, make a really convoluted pricing structure. That happens on both simulators, at least these two. It also happens on DCS, the simulator I got in recently. They're all about early beta access, and you pay for that, and you get a halfway finished aircraft. That's just the state of their system as well, so I hear people complaining about that. It's just all over the place, and I'm not sure that the next big platform we're all, anxious to see what it's all about, will be any better, and probably it's going to be even worse, and a lot of people lose good money and get out of the hobby before they even get started. I don't know where it's going.
I'm going to remain optimistic on the next big thing, but the truth is you got to be careful.
I'm hearing very mixed reviews from people that I know in the alpha.
Okay. I just want to say this. I don't want to hear what anybody in the alpha has to say. I don't want to hear the review of it because it's not time for a review. And I think this is very important. I think people need to understand that if you're listening to someone's opinion on an alpha state version, you're not getting an opinion. You're getting this is terrible. Yeah, it's an alpha. This is great. Yeah, well, we've seen many games in the past look fantastic, and by the time they release, they get downgraded heavily. So I don't think I can trust
Microsoft
anybody's
have
opinion.
a history of releasing products which are not necessarily very good, and the prime example to that is FSX. It was terrible when it came out.
FSX had bad timing. It had bad timing.
Very bad timing. But
It
it's coming up to being released in beta, so I'm told. I've seen lots of good things in it. Some of the pictures I've seen, I don't know how accurate they are and how real they are, but some of them do look very realistic.
Well, I'm going to reserve judgment on anything on 2020. I don't want to. I think it's fair to say that give them the opportunity to make the flight sim. Yeah. Give them the opportunity.
Quite a lot of unanswered questions, though, isn't there? Really, about
it's still an alpha.
No,
I
but
mean,
I mean, like, they're not really talking about. There's been discussions about it supposedly being released for Xboxes and things,
and we don't know how that's going to
supposedly.
pan out. But if they're trying to make it for Xbox, goodness gracious, you're going to need a big hard drive.
Well, that's what I heard. I'm not 100%. I haven't really looked into that, but I'm sure that they were trying to develop a console.
And that's great if they can. Maybe that'll bring some more people into the community. However, I think that the pricing model, everybody wants to know how much it's going to cost. Well, is it going to be subscription based? Is it going to be a one time? Can we do one or the other? You know, is it going to come with anything without paying more money in gold editions, platinum editions, and everything else that all these AAA, all the game makers come out with to just make you spend more money? Is it going to be a pay to have this airplane if you want to, DLC based? Who knows, right? Of course,
I don't think it's going to be cheap. Whatever
No.
happens, I don't think it's going to be cheap. I think we can probably all safely say that when it comes out, it's going to cost a lot of money, like everything else in flight sim.
Yeah, and that's fine. Again, if you're going to make something that's going to be pricey, I think, like I said earlier, this is an expensive hobby to some degree. You can kind of control that expense based on how much you want to put into it and what you can settle for. But I think that you're going to spend the money. Now, if we're going to get subscription based plus DLC and all this and that, you're just going to start reaching into my wallet every time I want to go flying. That's going to be a problem, I think, for a lot of people. I think we all want to be able, hey, can I just buy this one time? And if it's $100, I'll pay $100. All right, if it's good, because it's $100 and I'll get my time out of that, no problem. But if I got to pay you monthly, you better have a new aircraft that are study level. I better not have to put in $1 into payware to make it the way I want it. If you're going to charge me subscription based, I think, because that implies that you're going to continually support and add to it.
Well, there's definitely going to be payware support for it because PMDG have already signaled that their NGXU is basically the FS20 ready.
And that's fine as an option.
Shortly after.
But there better be an NGXU in there already waiting for me if I'm going to spend $10 a month, $20 a month, whatever it would be, if there was some sort of subscription model. I think that's the whole idea behind subscription is you keep getting the most latest and updated version, and they keep updating it. Like Photoshop, for example, I've always got a new version of it. They're always fixing it. I don't have to rebuy it because I'm buying it all the time. So I think, but like I said, I'm reserving judgment. I don't want to hear that somebody in the alpha says, oh, well, this looks like. I'm like, okay, well, it's in alpha. We haven't even got to the beta stages yet. Right now, if they released it today and charged a lot of money for it and it's not ready, then I'd have an argument, which is the whole reason why I think this channel is called Still in Beta is the fact that there's so many people that release stuff that's still in beta, and then they continually say it's still in beta well after they've taken your money to say, well, it's still in beta. We're working on that, so you just have to live with it. And there is no way to get your money back. It's impossible almost.
But isn't that what we do?
I'm still reserving judgment on FS20 as well. I mean, I'm kind of waiting to see what FS20 looks like before I make a decision on that or P3D version 5. That's certainly what I'm kind of holding off on. I've heard good things about P3D version 5 in terms of its performance and its frame rates. That's certainly what everyone seems to be saying. I mean, I don't think there's been a great deal of additional features added in sort of visually as such, but certainly the performance is one thing that's kind of getting good reviews. So we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what comes of 2020 when it finally happens, whether it'll be 2020 or whether it'll be 2021, who knows?
Oh, and that brings me to one last part of that, if you don't mind, is when the system requirements came out for that flight sim, everybody started to get really kind of annoyed. I think, oh my God, I have to have this. I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, well, one, how are you going to make it work on Xbox? Unless it's a different way of they're building the game to work specifically on Xbox. I don't know if it's going to look as good or have as much, or I personally have no idea how they're going to do that. But, the argument is now, I think, well, I don't want to spend, another $1,000 on a video card or spend another $3,000 or $5,000 on a computer that can run this thing at full max settings. And I think we're coming to a point now, it's the year 2020. If you want something good that runs great, looks good, using today's technology, today's features of particularly like ray tracing and all this stuff through video cards and the ability to actually use processors appropriately, you're going to have a newer machine. You cannot have a 10-year-old computer and expect it to just continually work on stuff that comes out today. That's impossible. It's unrealistic to think that. Now, should you have to buy a $5,000 computer to run Flight Sim? Probably not. I think there's a way that you can make a game that doesn't require that much hardware capacity. However, don't bitch and moan about something coming out this year and you saying you're having issues with it on a computer that was made 5-10 years ago that has really no relevance to today's what's coming out, because the technology has changed so much in how things are made. So that's my final stand on that, is if you're expecting something out of it on a computer that's really old, well, if you do Flight Sim today, you do know that even X-Plane and P3D can't run on a computer that's 5 years old without having some issues. Hell, it can't run on a brand new computer today without having issues. So a lot of things need to catch up on the old Sims to make it work on newer hardware. And if we're going to push for innovation, we're going to have to spend some money to get there. And that's my take on it.
Well, whilst I don't actually disagree with that at all, I think you make very valid points. I do think that sometimes these developers have to think about what's going on in the past, if you like, because the majority of the people that are potentially going to buy these products aren't going to have those up-to-date computers and are still running things on software that is 3, 4, 5 years old. So perhaps they need to consider looking to make it available, that, not too futuristic. And I think that was FSX's problem. FSX got released, and I don't think anyone had a computer that was good enough to run it because those computers hadn't been built yet. And I think within maybe 6 months or more, lots and lots of people had all reverted back to Flight Simulator 9 because it was a more stable, frame rate friendly product. And it kind of took FSX probably maybe another 3 or 4 years to kind of finally come forward. And that's why you were still seeing a lot of development for planes and sceneries for Flight Simulator 2004, even sort of kind of right up to now. I mean, there are some sort of diehard developers still making things for Flight Sim 9. And yet FSX came out in 2008, 2009, and it kind of didn't really work. And they made it too powerful.
Doesn't.
And it kind of put everyone off.
Yeah. So to wrap things up, we didn't say anything of value like buy this if you do this or whatever. So people just listen to us for 50 minutes talking about simulators and how bad everything is. Is that right?
Well, I'd say it's not as bad as some of us may have. It's a really good hobby. It's got a lot of good things out there for it. There's things out there you got to watch out for. And I suppose that's with everything,
Yeah, that's
it's got a great community because it's through Flight Simming that the likes of us have been able to meet other people that we all know from the airlines. And I've also had the opportunity to physically meet up at various events. So in that side of things, I think it's quite a niche market. It's very very sociable, and there's an awful lot of fun to be had.
It's a great community.
That's an extremely good point. The community has been great since I've joined this hobby. Is it, I don't know, 2004-ish around. It has never been really bad. There are always a few people who are a bit weird, but other than that, great experience regardless of what you're flying, how you fly, and what kind of developers give you issues. So yeah, that's a good one. So anyone who's listening to this looking for advice on which flight simulator to buy, well, maybe we can't answer that question really all that well. But what we can do is in the next few episodes do some side-by-side comparisons maybe, talk about our experiences with the various simulators because, well, we have them pretty much all. And yeah, maybe this will help. But right now, if you really want to get into it, start small, start slow, try to get the freeware going, don't go for the payware too quickly. And yeah, maybe you just need to figure out how things work before you really want to take the plunge and spend a lot of money.
And don't forget, we'll also be having a bit of fun along the way as well.
Oh yeah, fun is great. So join our airline, right? Not sponsored.
Oh no, you want the nasty side of virtual airlines? That'll be coming to you in an episode in the future.
Oh yes, there's dark sides in the community as well, but I mean,
I think they need to be exposed.
Are we going to put ourselves on trial?
I think again that's a whole nother episode.
It is. I could talk for an hour about how virtual airlines are great and how that they're not so great, and in my opinion, what determines a good virtual airline. But that's again down the road.
So many topics to talk about. So the best thing you can do is subscribe, like, and all of these good things if you're on YouTube, or simply continue listening to our podcast on whatever podcatcher you were listening on. So thanks for listening in, and well, see you in the next one. Thank you very much.
See you next time.
Bye.
See ya.